So let me get this straight, said Ambassador Krell, his translucent tentacles twitching with what humans had come to recognize as barely contained amusement. You willingly share your dwellings with lesser species, feed them, clean their excrement, and receive what exactly in return? Jack Reynolds sighed. This was the 5th time he'd had this conversation since the Galactic Federation had made first contact with Earth 3 months ago. He scratched behind Rex's ears, the German shepherd sitting obediently at his side, despite the bizarre purple lighting and strange scents filling the diplomatic chamber. They're called pets, Ambassador, and what we get in return is companionship, loyalty, and genuine affection. Things apparently in short supply across the galaxy. Krell's eye stalk swiveled to focus on Rex, who maintained perfect posture, tongue lolling out in a casual doggy smile. The ambassador's upper mouth parts clicked rapidly, the Zintillian equivalent of condescending laughter. Fascinating. The species that split the atom and achieved faster-than-light travel also maintains ritualistic servitude relationships with non-sentient creatures. Tell me, does this, Rex's, understand complex mathematics? Can it engage in philosophical debate? Jack corrected firmly, can understand over 50 verbal commands, recognize emotional states, and has saved my life twice. Once from a house fire, and once from a mugger. The 3 other alien dignitaries in the room exchanged glances through various sensory organs. The Prill representative, a gelatinous mass named Glubnort, who communicated through pigment waves across his surface, flashed a pattern that the universal translator rendered as, perhaps humans require emotional crutches due to their evolutionary isolation. Rather charming, in a primitive way. Jack bit his tongue. As Earth's junior diplomatic attaché to the Federation, he couldn't afford to tell Glubnort where to shove his pigment patterns. First contact had gone reasonably well, all things considered. No invasions, no probing, just a lot of bureaucratic paperwork and cultural exchange programs. Humanity had been deemed surprisingly non-violent for their technological stage, and granted provisional membership status. The fact that Jack had been allowed to bring Rex to the orbital diplomatic station was actually a significant victory. The Federation initially classified Earth animals as potential biological contaminants, until extensive testing proved otherwise. I assure you, continued Krell, keeping subordinate species for emotional gratification is a phase most emerging civilizations outgrow. The Dravik once maintained colonies of colorful flying creatures before they achieved molecular enlightenment. Now they find the practice embarrassingly sentimental. The 4th alien in the room, a crystalline being called Sick, who had remained silent until now, suddenly emitted a series of harmonic tones. I find it curious rather than embarrassing. The human-animal symbiosis appears mutually beneficial, if evolutionarily puzzling. Your species domesticated these creatures before developing written language, correct? Dogs have been our companions for at least 15,000 years, Jack confirmed, grateful for Tsick's less judgmental approach. They helped us hunt, protected our settlements, and evolved alongside us. Rex chose that moment to yawn widely, displaying an impressive set of teeth. Ambassador Krell's tentacles recoiled slightly. And you keep predatory species as companions. This one appears to possess significant natural weaponry. Jack smiled. Rex wouldn't hurt anyone unless I was threatened. That's the thing about dogs, they're loyal to a fault. They treat their humans like pack members, family to be protected at all costs. How quaint, Krell's translator rendered, though his tentacle posture suggested he found it more disturbing than charming. Well, I believe we've indulged your species' peculiarities enough for one orientation session. Tomorrow we begin the formal integration briefing for your provisional membership duties. As the aliens filed out of the room, Jack caught Sick lingering behind. May I observe the interaction between you and your companion species? The crystalline being asked, light refracting through its facets in what Jack had learned, was an expression of genuine curiosity. Sure, Jack replied. He turned to Rex. Shake. Rex immediately offered his paw, which Jack took and shook gently. Sick's crystalline body vibrated with fascination, and the creature understands your verbal commands. Without technology assistance. Watch this, Jack said. He pointed to a spot across the room. Rex, go lie down. The shepherd trotted over to the indicated area, and settled into a perfect down position, eyes still watching Jack attentively. Most impressive for a non-uplifted species, Sick chimed. Perhaps there is more to learn from Earth's biodiversity than the Federation initially assessed. After Tsick departed, Jack knelt beside Rex, ruffling the dog's thick fur. Don't worry about what they think, buddy. They just don't get it yet. Rex licked his face enthusiastically, tail thumping against the polished floor of the diplomatic chamber. "Yeah, I love you too. We'll show these aliens what humans and dogs can do together. They might have faster-than-light drives and unified field theories, but I bet none of them know the simple joy of playing fetch." Rex's ears perked up at the word fetch, and Jack couldn't help but laugh. Some things were universal, even in the face of advanced alien civilizations. His dog might not understand quantum mechanics, but he understood loyalty and love, concepts that seemed surprisingly advanced in this brave new galactic community. 3 weeks into his assignment on the Federation diplomatic vessel Harmonious Exchange, Jack was beginning to understand why so few species kept companions. The massive ship housed representatives from 27 different Federation species, and nearly all of them operated on purely utilitarian principles. "Your quarters are leaking atmosphere," reported the maintenance drone hovering outside Jack's door one morning. Jack glanced around the perfectly intact room, confused, until Rex trotted up beside him, panting happily after their morning exercise routine. "That's just dog breath," Jack explained. "It's normal." The drone's sensors pulsed. "Unauthorized biological emissions must be reported to Environmental Control. Section 47B clearly states, he's authorized." Jack cut in. "Earth Diplomatic Attachment Form E22 grants permission for cultural companion species." The drone paused, likely accessing the relevant documentation. "Confirmed. However, recommendation biological emission control implant available at Medical Bay." "No thanks, Rex's breath is fine." As the drone departed, Jack heard the distinctive sound of Krell's suction cup footsteps approaching down the corridor. "Reynolds, I see your predator continues to accompany you." The ambassador's tentacles curled in what Jack had learned was mild distaste. "Good morning to you too, Ambassador. Rex and I were just heading to the diplomatic briefing." Krell's eye stalk swiveled toward the dog. "The consortium representatives arriving today find mammalian predators particularly distressing. Perhaps your cultural attachment could remain here." Jack maintained his diplomatic smile. The Federation approved Rex's presence as part of Earth's cultural exchange package. "If the consortium has specific concerns, I'd be happy to review the diplomatic protocols." Before Krell could respond, a melodic series of tones announced Sek's approach. The crystalline being had become something of an ally over the past weeks, showing genuine interest in human-canine relationships rather than barely disguised contempt. "The human-canine dyad will attend today's session," Sek chimed decisively. "The consortium must adapt to diversity if they wish Federation membership." Krell's tentacles twisted in resignation. "Very well, but keep it restrained near the Groovians. They evolved from prey species and experience severe anxiety around predatory facial structures." The diplomatic briefing took place in the ship's vast convergence chamber, a hemispherical room lined with environmental accommodation pods for species with exotic breathing requirements. Jack took his assigned seat at the junior diplomat's table, Rex settling obediently at his feet. A Miclexian diplomat named Gorlax leaned over, his 7 eyes blinking asynchronously. "How do you maintain dominance over your servant species without neural implants?" he whispered. "Rex isn't my servant," Jack whispered back. "He's my companion, but you command, and he obeys," Gorlax insisted. "We've observed your interactions. Because he trusts me and I trust him, it's a relationship built on mutual respect." Gorlax's upper eye ridge furrowed. "Inefficient. The Miclexian synaptical control system ensures perfect compliance from our biological tools." Jack felt a chill. "Sounds more like slavery than partnership. Organic resources must be optimized." Gorlax replied matter-of-factly before turning his attention to the center of the chamber where Senior Ambassador Vreet was beginning the briefing. "Today we welcome representatives from the Vrax Consortium," Vreet announced, gesturing toward a delegation of tall, sharp-featured beings entering the chamber. "They seek trade relations and possible future Federation membership." Jack studied the newcomers with interest. The Vrax moved with unsettling grace, their jointed limbs bending in unexpected directions. Their facial features reminded him vaguely of Earth's praying mantises, but with disturbing almost humanoid eyes. As the Vrax delegation spread through the chamber to meet various representatives, one approached Jack's table. Up close, the alien smelled faintly of cinnamon and ammonia. "Greetings, I am Trade Envoy Kriz," the Vrax said, mandibles clicking lightly between words. "You must be from the newly admitted planet Earth, is it not?" "That's right," Jack replied, standing to greet the envoy properly. "Jack Reynolds, Junior Diplomatic Attaché." Kriz's attention shifted downward. "And this creature?" "This is Rex, my dog," Jack explained for what felt like the 100th time. "He's a companion animal from Earth." The Vrax's compound eyes studied Rex intently. Fascinating. A biological security system. More like a friend, actually. Friend. Chris tested the word as if it tasted strange. Your species anthropomorphizes non-sentient creatures. Jack bit back a retort. We recognize different kinds of intelligence. Rex may not build spaceships, but he understands emotions and loyalty better than some sentient species I've met. The Vrax's mandibles clicked rapidly. How charmingly primitive. On our world, lesser species serve practical functions or become nutrition. Rex, who had been perfectly calm until now, suddenly stiffened, a low rumble building in his throat. He doesn't usually react this way, Jack said, placing a calming hand on Rex's head. The dog quieted but remained alert, eyes fixed on Chris. Perhaps it senses my natural predatory nature, the Vrax suggested. Instinctual responses from simple creatures are to be expected. Ambassador Krell slithered over, tentacles arranged in formal greeting position. Envoy Chris, I see you've met our Earth representative and his cultural attachment. Indeed, most unusual to bring obsolete biological tools to diplomatic functions. Jack cleared his throat. Actually, in Earth history, dogs have served important diplomatic roles. They can sense tension and danger better than most technology. Both aliens stared at Jack with expressions his human brain interpreted as incredulous, despite their non-humanoid features. You rely on animal instinct rather than diplomatic algorithms. Krell's translator rendered his clicks as borderline insulting. We rely on multiple sources of information, Jack replied evenly. Technology and training, yes, but also intuition and biological signals. Envoy Chris made a series of sharp clicks that the translator didn't catch. Your species continues to surprise, Representative Reynolds. I look forward to our interactions. As the Vrax glided away, Rex relaxed slightly but maintained an alertness Jack rarely saw outside of potential threat situations back on Earth. Your creature disrupted diplomatic protocol, Krell admonished quietly. The Vrax are potential trade partners worth trillions in resources. Rex reacted to something Jack insisted. Dogs can detect subtle chemical changes, and micro-expressions even our technology sometimes misses. Krell's eye stalk swiveled in the galactic equivalent of an eye roll. Next you'll suggest we replace our security systems with primitive biological alarm mechanisms. As the briefing continued, Jack noticed Rex's attention remaining fixed on the Vrax delegation despite his outwardly calm demeanor. Something about these new aliens had triggered his companion's protective instincts. Jack made a mental note to report this to Captain Vreet later. Regardless of what the Federation thought about pets, he trusted Rex's judgment. After 15,000 years of evolution alongside humans, dogs hadn't lost their ability to sense danger, and Jack wasn't about to start ignoring those signals just because some tentacled bureaucrat thought it primitive. Good boy, he whispered to Rex, whose tail thumped once against the floor in acknowledgement. Keep watching. The Vrax delegation requests private negotiations regarding mineral extraction rights, announced Captain Vreet at the morning briefing 3 days later. As they specifically expressed interest in Earth's rare element deposits, Representative Reynolds will attend. Jack nodded, trying to maintain a professional demeanor despite his unease. Since the Vrax had arrived on the harmonious exchange, Rex had been unusually vigilant, sleeping lightly and positioning himself between Jack and any Vrax they encountered in the corridors. Captain, Jack said, raising his hand, would it be acceptable for Rex to accompany me to these negotiations? A ripple of what Jack had learned to recognize as amusement passed through the assembled diplomats. Krell's tentacles practically tied themselves in knots of derision. Surely you don't need your emotional support creature for standard negotiations, the ambassador remarked. Captain Vreet, a pragmatic six-limbed being with remarkable patience for interspecies differences, tilted her crested head. Is there a specific reason for this request, Representative Reynolds? Jack chose his words carefully. On Earth we sometimes rely on canines' heightened sensory capabilities in sensitive situations. Rex has been trained to detect certain inconsistencies in behavioral patterns. You mean to use this creature as a living lie detector? Asked Gorlax incredulously. Dogs can sense changes in pheromones and micro-expressions that even our technology sometimes misses, Jack explained. It's not about lie detection specifically, but overall situational awareness. Captain Vreet consulted her data tablet. Earth's diplomatic credentials do include provisions for their companion species. While unusual, there's no regulation prohibiting it. She turned to the Vrax representative. Would your delegation find this arrangement acceptable, Envoy Chris? The Vrax's mandibles clicked softly. We find Earth customs intriguing. The presence of their biological attachment poses no concern. Then it's settled, said Captain Vreet. The negotiation will take place in Chamber 4 at 1400 hours. Junior diplomats from Sectors 3 and 5 will also attend as observers. As the meeting dispersed, Sick approached Jack, crystal structure glinting under the chamber lights. Your companion has been exhibiting alertness patterns around the Vrax delegation, the crystalline being observed. I've been monitoring his behavioral changes. Jack raised an eyebrow. You've been watching Rex? The human-canine communication dynamic fascinates me, Sick admitted. Your species evolved separately, yet developed complex cooperative behaviors. I've noted 17 distinct non-verbal cues between you in the past 3 days alone. And you noticed Rex is on edge around the Vrax. 6 facets rippled in affirmation. His respiratory rate increases by 24%, and pupil dilation occurs whenever they approach beyond a 3-meter radius. Jack felt a small vindication. So I'm not imagining things. The Federation security systems have detected no anomalies with the Vrax delegation, Sick noted. Their credentials and biological signatures match Federation records. Sometimes threats don't show up on scanners, Jack said quietly. A curious assertion, Sick replied. Perhaps there is value in biological intuition that our technology has not yet replicated. At 1400 hours precisely, Jack and Rex arrived at Chamber 4, a smaller meeting room designed for sensitive discussions. The chamber's oval table was surrounded by various seating arrangements to accommodate different physiologies. The Vrax delegation, Kriz and 2 others were already present, along with junior diplomats from other sectors. Representative Reynolds, Kriz greeted, mandibles clicking lightly. And your biological attachment. How delightful. Rex sat at perfect attention beside Jack's chair, eyes never leaving the Vrax. Thank you for accommodating our cultural practices, Jack replied diplomatically. The meeting began with standard protocols, introductions, scope definitions, and preliminary trade parameters. Jack tried to focus on the discussion while keeping a peripheral awareness of Rex's behavior. The dog remained alert but calm, showing no signs of the agitation he'd displayed previously. Perhaps I was overreacting, Jack thought as the meeting progressed smoothly into its second hour. Now regarding access to Earth's thorium deposits, Kriz said, mandibles clicking more rapidly than before. Our scientists have developed a new extraction technique that requires minimal disruption to existing ecosystems. As Kriz spoke, one of his companions casually reached beneath the table. Rex's ears immediately perked forward, his body tensing subtly. To most observers, the dog simply appeared attentive, but Jack recognized the warning signs, the slight raise of hackles, the focused stare. Jack cleared his throat. Before we discuss extraction techniques, I'd like more information about how the processed materials would be transported off-planet. The question was a deliberate diversion. Jack watched as the second Vrax slowly withdrew its limb from beneath the table, mandibles clicking in what might have been irritation. Standard Federation transport protocols would apply, Kriz replied smoothly. Now, regarding our extraction proposal, actually, Jack interrupted, I'd like to request a short recess. Earth representatives are required to consult habitat impact assessments before discussing extraction methods. The diplomat from Sector 5, a gelatinous being named Florix, rippled with impatience. This seems unnecessary. The Vrax extraction methods are well documented. Nevertheless, Jack insisted, it's our protocol. Captain Vreet's voice came through the chamber's communication system. A 15-minute recess is granted. Refreshments are available in the adjacent room. As the diplomats filed out, Jack noticed Rex's eyes remaining fixed on the Vrax delegation, particularly the one who had reached beneath the table. Once in the corridor, Jack tapped his communication bracelet. Reynolds to security. I'd like a discreet scan of Chamber 4, specifically the underside of the negotiation table. Reason for request, came the immediate response. Jack hesitated. Let's call it a hunch based on anomalous behavior. There was a pause. Request denied. Chamber 4 was fully scanned before the meeting as per protocol. Jack stifled his frustration. Can you at least check the Vrax delegation's recent communications? All diplomatic communications are confidential unless a Level 2 security alert is active, the officer replied. If you have specific concerns, please file a formal request with Captain Vreet. Disconnecting, Jack knelt beside Rex, scratching behind his ears while whispering. What did you see, buddy? What's got you worried? Rex's intelligent eyes remained fixed on the Vrax in the refreshment room, a low whine escaping his throat. Everything all right, Representative Reynolds. The voice belonged to Tsick, who had approached without Jack noticing. I'm not sure, Jack admitted quietly. Rex is picking up on something about the Vrax, but I can't get security to take it seriously. Six crystalline structure vibrated in what Jack had learned was contemplation. Federation protocol requires evidence before action. Biological intuition is not considered sufficient. On Earth we've learned to trust certain intuitions, Jack said. Dogs especially have an uncanny ability to sense threats. Fascinating, Sick replied. In my culture we value pattern recognition above all else. Perhaps your companion species excels at patterns humans cannot perceive. Before Jack could respond, a chime signaled the end of the recess. As they returned to the chamber, Jack noticed the Vrax delegates huddled in intense conversation, their mandibles clicking rapidly in what appeared to be agitation. Change of plans, announced Captain Vreet through the communication system. The negotiation will relocate to Primary Conference Chamber 1 immediately. All delegates please proceed there. Jack frowned. Conference Chamber 1 was much larger, designed for full assemblies rather than intimate negotiations. As they redirected toward the new location, Rex's demeanor changed dramatically. The dog's hackles raised fully, a low growl rumbling in his chest as they approached the main conference area. "What is it, boy?" Jack whispered, now seriously concerned. Rex's growl deepened, his posture shifting to alert readiness, just as they rounded the corner to the conference chamber entrance. The massive doors stood open, and inside, Jack could see something that made his blood run cold. The chamber was filled with armed Vrax, far more than the three-member delegation, and Captain Vreet, along with several senior diplomats, were surrounded, hands raised in surrender. "It appears," Sick observed calmly beside him, "that your companion's intuition was correct." Jack slowly backed away from the entrance, pulling Rex with him. "We need to alert security." "I suspect," Sick replied, "that security has already been compromised." As if confirming this assessment, alarm sirens suddenly blared throughout the ship, followed by an announcement in the Vrax language that the translator rendered chillingly. "Attention all beings. The harmonious exchange is now under Vrax control. Remain in your quarters and await processing. Resistance will result in immediate termination." "This way," Tuck whispered, crystal body dimming to reduce visibility as he guided Jack and Rex down a maintenance corridor. "My species designed portions of this vessel. There are passages unknown to most Federation members." Jack followed, one hand firmly on Rex's collar to keep him silent despite the dog's obvious agitation. The narrow corridor hummed with power conduits, bathing them in a faint blue glow. "What do the Vrax want?" Jack asked, keeping his voice low. "This can't just be about Earth's mineral rights. The harmonious exchange carries diplomatic access codes to all Federation worlds," Tuck explained. "With those codes the Vrax could bypass planetary defenses throughout the sector." A sudden announcement echoed through the ship's communication system. "Attention all diplomatic staff. Report to Conference Chamber 1 for emergency briefing. Non-compliance will be interpreted as hostile action." "They're gathering hostages," Jack realized. Tuck's crystalline body pulsed in agreement. "Standard insurgent protocol. They will use Federation representatives to ensure compliance from their homeworlds." They reached a junction where the maintenance corridor split in three directions. Tuck paused, facets realigning as he considered their options. "We must reach the emergency beacon in communications," the crystalline being decided. "However, sensors indicate Vrax forces have established control points along primary routes." Rex suddenly stiffened, his attention focused down the left corridor. A low growl rumbled in his throat. "Someone's coming," Jack whispered, pulling Rex back into the shadows. Three Vrax soldiers moved past the junction, carrying what appeared to be scanning equipment. Their mandibles clicked rapidly in their native language as they methodically swept the corridor. "They are scanning for life signs," Tuck translated quietly. "My crystalline structure does not register on standard biorhythmic scanners, but you and your companion will." Jack's mind raced. "How far to communications?" 3 levels up, approximately 400 meters from our position, and the nearest control point. Sensors indicate Vrax presence at all major junctions and lift access points." Jack knelt beside Rex, an idea forming. "On Earth we used to play a game called Distraction. Want to play, boy?" Rex's ears perked up at Jack's tone, intelligent eyes focused on his human companion. "I need a diversion," Jack explained to Tuck. "Rex can lead them away while we move toward communications." Tuck's structure vibrated in concern. "Your companion would be in considerable danger." "Rex is faster and smarter than they'll expect," Jack said with confidence. "He can evade them long enough for us to send a distress signal." He rummaged through his pockets, producing a small cloth bag. Personal effects from my quarters, he explained, seeing Zek's curiosity. Never go anywhere without Rex's favorite treats. Jack held up a small bone-shaped biscuit. Rex, listen carefully. I need you to be a very good boy. He pointed down the right corridor. When I say go, I need you to run that way, make noise, and then hide. Understand? Make noise then hide. Rex's eyes remained locked on Jack's, ears alert to every word. Is your companion truly capable of understanding such complex instructions? Zek asked skeptically. 15,000 years of coevolution, Jack replied with a grim smile. We understand each other better than most diplomats in this Federation. He removed his Federation ID badge and secured it to Rex's collar. The Vrax will detect the badge's signal and think it's me. He scratched behind Rex's ears one more time. Ready? Rex licked Jack's hand once, body tense with anticipation. Go. With barely a sound, Rex bolted down the right corridor. Moments later they heard a series of sharp barks echoing through the passageways, followed by the sound of running Vrax soldiers and excited clicking. Now, Jack whispered, and he and Zek moved quickly toward the opposite corridor. They navigated through increasingly narrow maintenance shafts, Zek's knowledge of the ship's architecture proving invaluable. Twice they froze as Vrax patrols passed nearby, and once they were forced to backtrack when they encountered a sealed security door. Communications is through that chamber, Zek indicated finally, pointing to a service hatch. However, sensors indicate 3 Vrax soldiers inside. Jack peered through the small viewport in the hatch. The communications center was indeed occupied by armed Vrax, their mantis-like forms hunched over control consoles. I can't send the distress signal with them there, Jack whispered. And I don't see any weapons we could use. A sudden commotion from a nearby corridor drew the attention of the Vrax in the communications center. Jack recognized the sound immediately, Rex's distinctive bark, followed by the clatter of objects falling. 2 of the Vrax soldiers immediately left to investigate, mandibles clicking in agitation. The third remained at the console, weapon at ready. Your companion appears to have excellent timing, Zek observed. He's creating opportunities, Jack replied, pride evident in his voice. But we still need to deal with that guard. Zek's crystalline body suddenly shifted, facets realigning into a denser configuration. My species evolved on a high-gravity world, he explained. In emergencies, we can briefly increase our density. Without further explanation, Zek pushed through the service hatch. The remaining Vrax guard spun around, weapon raised, but Zek's now dense crystalline form slammed into the alien with surprising force, knocking it unconscious. That was unexpected, Jack remarked as he scrambled through the hatch. We prefer diplomatic solutions, Zek replied, returning to normal density with visible effort. But we are not defenseless. Jack quickly moved to the communication console. Cover the door, I'll send the distress signal. His fingers flew over the unfamiliar controls, guided by his diplomatic training. The Federation emergency protocols were designed to be accessible to all member species, with redundant systems for exactly this type of situation. Vrax approaching, Zek warned, positioning himself beside the door. Multiple life signs. Almost there, Jack muttered, finally locating the emergency beacon subroutine. He activated it, watching with relief as the console confirmed transmission. Signal sent. Federation forces should respond within. The door burst open. 3 Vrax soldiers rushed in, weapons aimed at Jack and Zek. Behind them stood Envoy Kriz, mandibles clicking in what Jack now recognized as amusement. Representative Reynolds, Kriz said smoothly. How resourceful of you to evade our security measures. The distress signal is already sent, Jack replied, slowly raising his hands. Federation peacekeeping forces will respond, by which time we will have completed our mission, Kriz replied dismissively. Your warning merely accelerates our timetable. The Vrax soldiers moved forward to secure Jack and Zek. As they approached, Jack noticed something unusual about their movements. Nervous, agitated, constantly checking over their shoulders. You seem concerned, Envoy Kriz, Jack observed. Losing control of the situation. Kriz's mandibles clicked rapidly. A minor inconvenience. Your primitive biological alarm system has caused some disruption. Most unexpected from such a simple creature. Jack couldn't help but smile despite their predicament. Rex is causing problems for your soldiers, isn't he? The creature has disabled 2 security patrols through methods our soldiers find difficult to anticipate, Kriz admitted. It moves through ventilation systems we believe too small for threat entities. Dogs evolved as pack hunters, Jack explained, enjoying the irony of educating his captor. They understand strategy, distraction, flanking maneuvers, and German shepherds are particularly intelligent. Nevertheless, Chris continued, your companion will soon be neutralized, and you will join the other representatives as our guests until negotiations are complete. As the Vrax soldiers secured Jack's hands with restraining devices, a small metallic object rolled into the room from the corridor outside. It bounced once, twice, then began emitting a high-pitched whine that made the Vrax soldiers recoil in obvious pain. Sonic disruptor. One soldier chittered in alarm. Vrax auditory sensitivity. The soldiers clutched at their head appendages as the sound increased in intensity. Jack, feeling only mild discomfort, took advantage of their distraction to break free. He lunged toward Chris, tackling the envoy to the ground, while Sek moved with surprising speed to neutralize the disoriented guards. Federation security protocols, Jack explained to the struggling Chris beneath him. Every ship carries sonic deterrents calibrated to each known species' vulnerabilities. As the sonic device wound down, Jack heard a familiar whine from the doorway. Rex stood there, tail wagging, a look of canine satisfaction on his face. Good boy, Jack said, grinning broadly. Very good boy. How did you activate the sonic disruptor? Jack asked Rex as if expecting an answer, scratching behind the German shepherd's ears. Rex responded with a happy pant, looking entirely too pleased with himself. Fascinating, Sek observed. Securing the unconscious Vrax with their own restraints. Your companion appears to have located the security cache and activated the specific device effective against Vrax physiology. He probably just knocked it over, Jack admitted with a grin. But his timing is impeccable. Envoy Chris, now securely restrained and recovering from the sonic assault, clicked his mandibles in what Jack had learned to recognize as contempt. You attribute strategic thinking to a simple beast. This is why humans remain an evolutionary curiosity rather than a galactic power. Jack knelt to check Rex's collar, noticing several strange green smears on the dog's fur. What's this? Did you bite one of them? Impossible, Chris scoffed. Vrax exoskeletons resist cutting weapons, let alone primitive biological dentition. Rex whined softly, nosing Jack's hand before trotting to the door and looking back expectantly. I think he wants us to follow him, Jack said, rising to his feet. The hostages are our priority, Sek reminded him. Captain Vreet and the senior diplomats are being held in Conference Chamber 1. And Rex knows it, Jack replied, moving toward the door. He's been on every diplomatic tour of this ship. He knows where everyone should be. Sek's crystalline structure vibrated with what Jack had come to recognize as skepticism. You believe your companion is deliberately leading us to the hostages. Only one way to find out. They moved cautiously into the corridor, Rex taking point with surprising stealth for a creature his size. The German shepherd led them through service passages and maintenance tubes that even Sek hadn't known existed. Your companion appears to have mapped alternative routes through the vessel, Sek noted as they squeezed through a narrow utility shaft. Rex has been exploring this ship since we arrived, Jack explained. I thought he was just getting exercise, but he's been creating a mental map. Dogs used to navigate through forests and mountains on Earth. A spaceship isn't that different to him. They emerged from the utility passage into a dimly lit storage area near Conference Chamber 1. Rex froze, hackles rising as his acute hearing detected movement ahead. Jack and Sek immediately pressed themselves against the wall. 4 Vrax guards patrolled the corridor outside the conference chamber, weapons at ready. Through the chamber's transparent doors, Jack could see Captain Vreet and at least a dozen senior diplomats seated under guard. We need a diversion, Jack whispered. Rex looked up at him, tail wagging slightly as if in agreement, then slipped away before Jack could stop him, disappearing into a ventilation duct. Your companion appears to have volunteered, Sek observed. He does that, Jack replied, worry mixing with pride. Let's be ready to move when he creates his distraction. They didn't wait long. Moments later, alarms blared from the opposite end of the corridor. The Vrax guards chittered nervously, mandibles clicking in agitation. Security breach in propulsion control, one of them announced. Command orders immediate response. 2 of the guards rushed toward the alarm, leaving just a pair outside the conference chamber. Not enough, Jack muttered. We need both gone. As if on cue, the ship's environmental system suddenly activated, spraying fire suppressant foam throughout the corridor. The remaining guards chittered in alarm as the thick foam coated their sensory appendages. Now, Jack whispered, and he and Sek rushed forward through the foam. The blinded guards never saw them coming. Jack tackled one, while Sek slammed into the other, their momentum carrying all four into the wall. A brief struggle ensued, but the Vraks, disoriented by the foam covering their sensory organs, were quickly subdued. Jack swiped the unconscious guard's access card across the chamber door panel. It slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the startled faces of the hostages inside. "Representative Reynolds," Captain Vreet exclaimed, 6 limbs shifting in surprise. "How did you—" "No time to explain," Jack interrupted, moving quickly to free the captain from her restraints. "Federation forces are responding to our distress call, but we need to secure the ship's critical systems." Ambassador Krell, his tentacles bound awkwardly behind him, looked at Jack with what might have been newfound respect. "You evaded capture and sent a distress signal. Most unexpected," with help Jack acknowledged, freeing the ambassador. "Your crystalline colleague shows unexpected combat proficiency," Krell observed, indicating Sek. "Not him," Jack replied. "Rex." As if summoned by his name, Rex appeared at the chamber entrance, tail wagging as he surveyed the room of startled diplomats. "The canine?" Captain Vreet asked incredulously. "Your companion animal assisted in our rescue." Before Jack could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life with a series of urgent Vrax clicks and hisses. The universal translator rendered, "All units, the Earth creature has breached environmental controls. Repeat, the quadruped has." The message cut off abruptly. He didn't just create a distraction, Jack realized with growing amazement. He's systematically disrupting their operation. Sek had access to control terminal near the wall. Sensors indicate multiple system failures throughout the vessel. Life support redirected to non-essential areas. Communication arrays cycling randomly. Navigation systems entering diagnostic mode. "Impossible," Ambassador Krell insisted. "A non-sentient creature cannot operate complex technology." "Rex doesn't need to understand the technology," Jack explained, a proud smile spreading across his face. "He just needs to understand cause and effect. Pull this lever, alarms go off. Push this button, foam sprays." "He's been watching us operate these systems for weeks." "Remarkable," Captain Vreet said, moving toward the control terminal. "But we must regain control of critical systems before the Vraks recover. Security protocols require command authentication," Sek noted. "The Vraks have locked out standard access." Rex suddenly barked, drawing their attention. The German shepherd trotted over to Jack, something metallic clutched gently in his jaws. "What have you got there, boy?" Jack asked, taking the object. It was a Vrak's command cylinder, the authentication device carried by their senior officers. "Where did you get this?" Jack asked, scratching Rex's ears. Rex's mouth opened in what could only be described as a doggy grin, tongue lolling as green Vrak's blood glistened on his teeth. "Impossible," Ambassador Kriz had insisted earlier. "Vrak's exoskeletons resist cutting weapons, let alone primitive biological dentition." Jack couldn't help but laugh. "Guess they didn't account for German Shepherd bite force. Earth predators evolved some pretty impressive teeth." He handed the command cylinder to Captain Vreet, who quickly inserted it into the control terminal. "Authentication accepted," the system announced. "Command functions restored. Seal all sections containing Vrak's forces," Captain Vreet ordered. "Restore life support to diplomatic quarters and reroute emergency power to defensive systems." As the ship's systems responded to her commands, Jack knelt beside Rex. "Who's the best boy in the whole galaxy?" "You are." Rex's tail wagged furiously as he licked Jack's face, seemingly unaffected by his heroic exertions throughout the crisis. "Federation peacekeeping vessels approaching," Sek announced from the terminal. "Estimated arrival in 17 minutes. The Vrak situation is contained," Captain Vreet confirmed. "Thanks to unexpected assistance." All eyes in the room turned to Rex, who sat beside Jack with tongue lolling and tail sweeping the floor, the very picture of canine satisfaction. Ambassador Krell's tentacles waved in what Jack was learning to recognize as embarrassment. Perhaps the ambassador admitted reluctantly, "There is something to be said for your species' approach to interspecies cooperation." 15,000 years of partnership," Jack replied, ruffling Rex's fur. "Humans and dogs figured out long ago that different kinds of intelligence can complement each other." Rex barked once in apparent agreement, before promptly rolling onto his back, 4 paws in the air, requesting a well-earned belly rub. 2 weeks after what Federation records now officially called the Vrax incident, Jack sat in the Harmonious Exchange's newly repaired observation lounge, watching stars streak by as the diplomatic vessel resumed its mission. Rex dozed contentedly beside him, occasional dream twitches making his paws jerk as if chasing something. Your companion appears to be processing recent events, observed Sick, crystalline form catching starlight as he approached. Jack smiled. Just dreaming about chasing squirrels most likely. Dogs are remarkably good at living in the moment. Perhaps a valuable philosophical approach, Sick replied, settling into a configuration that approximated sitting. The Federation Council has completed its review of the incident. They were most impressed by your companion's contribution. So I've heard. Rex has become something of a celebrity. Indeed, in the days following the Vrax's failed takeover attempt, Rex had achieved a status no Earth being had managed since first contact. Federation diplomats who had previously avoided the primitive Earth predator now requested introductions. Security personnel had analyzed Rex's improvised tactics with professional admiration. 3 different xenobiologists had formally requested permission to study human-canine coevolution. The observation lounge doors slid open, admitting Captain Vreet and Ambassador Krell. Rex's ears perked up immediately, his tail thumping against the deck in greeting. Representative Reynolds. Captain Vreet acknowledged with a respectful dip of her crested head. We bring news from the Federation Council. Jack stood, automatically straightening his uniform. Captain, Ambassador. Krell's tentacles arranged themselves in what Jack had recently learned was the Zentilian gesture of respect, a configuration the ambassador had never used toward him before. The Council has reviewed my report on the Vrax incursion, Captain Vreet continued. They were particularly interested in the role your companion played in resolving the crisis. Rex was just doing what comes naturally, Jack replied modestly, protecting his pack. Nevertheless, Ambassador Krell interjected, tentacles rippling. Your species' coevolutionary relationship with these companions represents a form of interspecies cooperation that the Federation had not previously documented or valued. In recognition of this insight, Captain Vreet announced formally, the Federation Council has approved a new diplomatic initiative. Earth will head a commission on interspecies cooperative development. Jack blinked in surprise. That's quite an honor for a provisional member species. A deserved one. Sick chimed in, crystal structure glittering with what Jack had learned was enthusiasm. My analysis of Rex's problem-solving approaches during the crisis has suggested 17 potential applications for cross-species intelligence networks. Ambassador Krell's upper mouth parts clicked in what Jack now recognized as mild embarrassment. I may have misjudged the value of emotional bonds between different intelligence types. My species evolved through purely logical pathways. The concept of interspecies companionship was foreign. Jack knelt to scratch Rex's ears, earning an appreciative canine sigh. Humans have always been better together than apart. That applies to our relationships with other Earth species too. Most fascinating, mused Captain Vreet. In our haste to develop technological solutions, perhaps the Federation has overlooked biological partnerships. Which brings us to the Council's second decision, Ambassador Krell continued, tentacles shifting to a more formal configuration. Earth's companion animals have been reclassified in Federation taxonomy, no longer subservient non-sentients, but cooperative intelligence partners. Jack couldn't help but laugh. Try telling Rex he's a cooperative intelligence partner when he's rolling in something disgusting at the park. The joke seemed lost on the aliens, but Jack didn't mind. The recognition was what mattered, acknowledgement that the bond between humans and dogs was more than primitive emotional attachment. Additionally, Captain Vreet added, Earth's status has been upgraded from provisional to full membership, with accelerated integration timelines. All because of a dog who wouldn't let aliens threaten his human, Jack said, smiling down at Rex who looked up with complete adoration. Indeed, Sick agreed. Though I believe the correct classification would be because of a human who trusted his companion's instincts when an entire galactic civilization dismissed them. A small chime sounded, and Captain Vreet checked her communication device. It appears the Federation educational delegation has arrived. They are particularly eager to meet Earth's famous cooperative intelligence partner. Rex's ears perked up at the captain's excited tone, his tail beginning to wag in anticipation. I believe I am beginning to understand the appeal of these creatures, Ambassador Krell admitted, one tentacle cautiously extending toward Rex. There is something comforting about their unconditional positive regard. Rex sniffed the proffered tentacle, then gave it a gentle lick. The ambassador's eye stalks widened in surprise but didn't withdraw. He likes you, Jack explained. That's a sign of acceptance. Most unexpected, Krell replied, tentacles quivering in what Jack now recognized as pleasure. I had not anticipated reciprocal affection from a species so different from my own. That's the thing about dogs, Jack said. watching with amusement as the formerly dismissive ambassador cautiously patted Rex's head. 15,000 years of evolution alongside humans taught them to see beyond appearances to what really matters. Captain Vreet's communication device chimed again. The delegation grows impatient, she noted. And I believe several Federation species have submitted requests to visit Earth specifically to learn about these dogs. Tell them to bring treats, Jack suggested with a smile. It's the universal language of canine diplomacy. As they made their way to meet the delegation, Rex trotted alongside Jack with the dignified bearing that had earned him admirers throughout the ship. Crew members nodded respectfully as they passed. One Prill engineer even flashed a pigment pattern that the translator rendered as honor to the Earth Guardian. In the main reception hall, a diverse group of Federation representatives waited. Many species Jack had never encountered before. All eyes, stalks, sensory pits and other visual organs fixed on Rex as they entered. "Is that truly the Earth Defense Specialist?" asked an avian being with iridescent feathers. "This is Rex," Jack introduced proudly. "German Shepherd, Federation hero, and very good boy." Rex sat at perfect attention, surveying the gathered aliens with calm dignity. Only the slight wagging of his tail betrayed his excitement at meeting new people. "Our preliminary research indicates 17% of Earth households contain canine companions," noted a data analyst species. "Does this represent a significant defensive force?" Jack laughed. "They're not weapons, they're family. The protection they provide comes from love, not training." The concept seemed to confuse several delegates, but others leaned forward with interest. "Your species forms familial bonds with non-relatives?" asked a mollusk-like diplomat. "Even cross-species, it's what humans do," Jack explained. "We connect. Sometimes our strongest connections aren't with those who look like us, but with those who see the world differently." Rex chose that moment to yawn widely, displaying his impressive teeth before settling into a comfortable position against Jack's leg. Several delegates took instinctive steps backward. "Don't worry," Jack assured them. "He only uses those when someone threatens his human." As the formal reception began, Jack found himself the center of unprecedented diplomatic attention. Species that had previously dismissed Earth as an evolutionary backwater now sought insights into human-canine partnerships. 3 different Federation members inquired about establishing Earth tourism programs specifically to interact with dogs. "I believe your companion has accomplished more for Earth's galactic standing in 2 weeks than our diplomatic corps managed in 3 months, Captain Vreet observed wryly. Ambassador Krell, who had remained unusually close to Rex throughout the reception, flexed his tentacles thoughtfully. "Perhaps we have been measuring intelligence by overly narrow parameters. The ability to form productive cross-species bonds may be as valuable as mathematical reasoning or technological innovation. Dogs taught humans that lesson thousands of years ago," Jack replied. "We're better together." As if understanding the conversation, Rex looked up at Jack with complete trust and devotion. Jack knelt to ruffle the fur around his neck, whispering, "Who's the best diplomatic crisis resolver in the whole galaxy?" Rex's tail thumped enthusiastically against the deck in response. "You know," Jack said to the assembled diplomats, "on Earth we have a saying about dogs. We don't deserve them, but we're lucky to have them anyway." "On the contrary," Sec replied, crystal structure glinting in the reception hall lights. "Based on observable evidence, I would suggest that you and Rex deserve each other perfectly. And the galaxy, it seems, is fortunate to have you both." Rex barked once in apparent agreement, eliciting startled reactions followed by appreciative murmurs from the gathered delegates. Jack couldn't help but smile. From primitive emotional attachment to valuable cooperative intelligence partner in just 2 weeks, not bad for a species whose greatest ambition was typically the next treat or belly rub. Whatever challenges awaited humanity in the vast galaxy, Jack felt confident that they would face them the same way humans had faced challenges for 15,000 years, with loyal canine companions by their sides. Different kinds of intelligence, working together, just as it should be.